This is just to show you the potential growth area of kochia, like it's everywhere. And so PPO resistant, which is PPO, that's like group 14, they're PPO inhibitors, we call them the group, anything group 14, that's how it works. Even though they're all different, authority is very different from AIM, but they're still group 14, that's how they kill the weed. So this, you see the whole projected range of kochia, and when you're looking up here, just to show you, you don't have to look, this is really hard to see, but this is how they do these studies. This is carfentrazone or AIM, this is saflufenicil, that's heat. They have two susceptible populations out here, and then a resistant population in the back. With kochia, they replant one healthy plant, if they're doing a post-emergent herbicide, one healthy plant into this soil, and then start spraying it. Here's 0, where they haven't sprayed anything, so this is what it would look like if you didn't spray, and then you start increasing the rate. And field rate on AIM is somewhere in here, so you can see at 1/10 the field rate, it's actually working in some places, and then you get to field rate, you get to 3x field rate, and you go all the way up to 100 times field rate. And you can see this back row here is not dying at field rate, and it's still not dying at a 3x field rate. With saflufenicil or heat, it's the same thing. Your field rate somewhere's in here. We got a couple susceptible populations, and you're actually getting really good control even at really low rates unless you have susceptible. And we're the same thing here. We've got at a 3x rate, so that's more than an overlap, right? Then you're still getting a fairly significant amount of kochia coming through that, and there's even some kochia growth there at a 10x rate. So once you start seeing rates like that, and then you'll see these graphs. Basically, this red line is the resistant, and the further away it just means that these two are the two susceptible lines, that's resistant. The further out that is, the more resistant it is. So spraying more chemical doesn't help. You can't afford it, and you can't do it. It's not going to work. So this is where this last summer we did just a really quick study. I had about 50 different sampling packages, and I distributed them as best I could around the province. Wasn't able to do anything up here, but we did a lot in southern Manitoba, southwest Manitoba. This is up near Brandon Verdon. There's some here around central Manitoba, and then a bunch right around Winnipeg, and getting up into that Interlake area. And so anything in red is where we found group 14 resistant kochia. And so this is in North Dakota. It is actually currently 38 out of 53 counties have group 14 resistant kochia. And so what has happened actually, when we did studies, I don't have that slide in this presentation, but when we did the last time we did a kochia survey, we actually I think had 882 different sampling sites across the prairies, went back to that same group of seed, that batch of seed from all those places, tested it all, and none of that was resistant to group 14. So it wasn't that it was resistant and we weren't testing so we didn't know, it was not resistant. So up to 2021, that last survey was done in 2021, that was about 2018 to 2021, we did these kochia surveys across the prairies, and none of that seed gathered had group 14 resistant. So this has happened since 2021, which is really not good because it's happening fast and it's hitting hard. So basically now we can assume that kochia is exhibiting resistance to up to 5 different herbicide sites of action. The group 14 resistance has evolved or spread very, very quickly since 2021. 28% of the fields had at least one. There's 3 different substitutions or 3 different mutations, and so this is good to know because different products will have different mutations, so this is just sciencey stuff, I don't worry about that, but it does seem to be really a lot of this kind of mutation. Why? We don't know, but they might be able to figure out a reason why, and at some point maybe we can figure out how to get around that with something else. But we had almost 30% of the fields are resistant to group 14, and that's really scary. Very limited herbicide options and integrated weed management is critical and necessary. So what do we do if we suspect we have kochia? Basically assume it's all group 9 resistant, or basically Roundup alone is not going to work. What else are we using? Edge, where you can, that's a group 3. Dicamba, fluroxypyr, 2,4-D. I did not think that 2,4-D was going to do a good job on kochia, but in the Enlist or E3 systems from Corteva and Pioneer, 12 ounces of 2,4-D twice actually can do a pretty decent job on very small kochia. Just saying, it's a good option, but you still need to have some other things in your pocket. Group 6, that's Partner, it's in Bromoxone, and a ton of other products, and Tough, Liberty, Group 10, Group 14, there's just a few, Authority, Heat, Blackhawk, Brex, or Insight, all the 14s. Group 27s, there's our wheat herbicides, Infinity, On Deck, Talinor, and then our corn herbicides, Lotus, Armazon, Impact, Shieldex, Callisto, on and on. You do get suppression with group 15, that's Zidua, that's Pyroxasulfone, and Fierce, and Focus, and a ton of other products. It's in Authority Supreme, Heat Complete, it's in a lot of different products. Focus NXT it's in as well. But if we have growing group 4 resistance and we know we're starting to lose dicamba and fluroxapyr, again, fluroxapyr is failing faster, so if you are using fluorox, use it with something else. Have something else in the tank, and make sure you're using enough fluorox, because some of the generic products do not have enough, so you have to talk to your retail about that, or you can do the math yourself, it's in the guide. And because we have group 14 resistance, if we lose that, then we have group 3, we have edge where we can use it, that's a pre-emerge, incorporate twice. We have 2 post-emergent contact herbicides. So I have brought some of this at the back. We have to start talking about Delta T. Our weather stations are going to be reporting it as of this spring. Most private weather stations are going to be reporting Delta T. If you're lucky and you have a brand new fancy John Deere sprayer, they have on-board weather stations and they calculate Delta T on the fly. So especially working with contact herbicides, we know we have to make those contact herbicides continue to work as best they can. And with contact herbicides, that's coverage, which is a function of droplet size, water volume, all kinds of things. And weather is really important. So I did bring a few of these, and if you want, I can send you the PDF as well. So please take a look at that and start becoming familiar with Delta T. And then, yeah, so we've got those 2 contact herbicides. We're relying heavily on Liberty. We have got to make sure that we let that molecule work as long as we can. And then, again, our group 27s. So this is another way to look at that. This is a table that Charles and I put together. And so here is basically all of the crops in Western Canada. We've got lentil out there. We're probably not going to grow much of that, probably not much of flax, but still. Here's your pre-emerge, your pre with residual. You're basically group 3 and group 15, mostly suppression, but a little bit of control with edge in here where you can use edge. When you go to burn-off products, this is all 6s and 27s. So you're heavily reliant on 6s and 27s. That's tough, and then that's bermoxinol and whatever else it's in. And then foliar applied post, if you're still looking for control with kochia and you're not using a 4 or a 14 or a 9, you basically have 6s and 27s. You have group 10. You do get suppression with Zidua, and again we're down to 27s. So you are pulling from a very shallow pool of products. And they're heavily, this column here, your pre-emerge, your burn-off, and your post-emerge is heavily reliant on 6s and 27s, so don't break those. Kochia and Enlist 3, basically you need to be proactive versus reactive. That's a great system. We need that system. I like the Extend system too. We need to have both on the ground and working, and the key is to keep them working before we break those 2, because in the States they have broken the dicamba system. It's really not working well in a lot of places anymore. So basically, if you know you have a kochia issue and you're going to be growing an Enlist or an E3 corn or soybean, something down ahead of whichever crop you've got, Authority or Edge or Verax or Residua, something pre to take down some of that population. And then post, we've got glyphosate plus Enlist 1, Liberty 200 SN, it has to be the 200, don't do the 150. Plus Enlist 1, that's the 240 choline, Liberty alone. Zidua can be used post-emergent, early post-emergent on corn and soybeans only. It's pre-emergent on a bunch of crops, but post-emergent on corn and soybeans only. And this is the formula. It's Liberty 200 SN. It's a liter. You got to use the AMS. Use as much as you can. 20 gallons of water. You got to spray it like a fungicide, and that is not negotiable. If you want this thing to keep working, you want Liberty to keep working. That's how you spray that in that system. Okay, so this is a kochia field. It's actually soybean field, but there's a lot of kochia there. It should have never. This was just a poor choice in gen. There's a lot of poor choices went on here. So you can just see by the white on top of the ground that we're in a very saline corner of the field. It was an Enlist bean. It was a very short bean. It was planted in wide rows. It never did cover the rows. It was very short too, so not a lot of crop competition coming from there. They had nothing down for pre-emergent, so they had nothing at all. And they did spray all of this field with Liberty 200 SN. If you can't really see, but it did fry the kochia here, and the kochia all grew back because that's a contact herbicide, and it doesn't get into the root, it doesn't kill the plant. And when you have zero plant competition out here, the kochia just all grew back. So that was just a lot of things not done well on that field, and we're getting closer to harvest, and they were doing nothing about this. That should be mowed. Not a fan of cultivation. It just increases salinity. I mean, when you have a kochia issue, lots of times it's because you have a saline issue, and if you have a saline issue, you got a problem with the water. You have to fix the water where and if you can, and then hopefully your salinity issue will be mitigated. It'll go away a little bit if we get enough rain, and to kind of wash those salts away again. but the kochia and things like foxtail barley show up when you have salt, which is really a water problem. Anyways, so you've seen I use these slides all the time. This is great work from Charles at Lethbridge.